My 8-year-old told her teacher that I'm not her real mom. I still remember the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, quiet, ordinary, uneventful. I was cleaning up after lunch when my phone started ringing. The screen said, "Ms. Price, school." At first, I thought maybe my daughter, Emily, had forgotten her lunchbox again. She's 8, bright, curious, but a little scatterbrained. So I answered casually, expecting the usual. But Ms. Price's voice wasn't casual. It was careful, hesitant. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "I think you should come down to the school. There's something we need to discuss about Emily." Immediately, my stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" I asked. "She's fine," the teacher said quickly. "She's safe. But there's something she said today that I think we should talk about in person." By the time I hung up, my mind was already racing through every possibility: bullying, a fight, maybe Emily said something inappropriate. But when I got to the school, the look on Ms. Price's face told me it wasn't any of that. She led me into her classroom after the kids had gone to lunch. The little desks were covered with papers and crayons, and for some reason, the smell of glue and pencil shavings made my chest tighten. Ms. Price sat across from me. "First," she said, "please know Emily wasn't in trouble. It's just that she said something unusual. She told the class that you're not her real mom." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I actually laughed, awkwardly, nervously. "What? She said that?" Ms. Price nodded. She seemed very certain of it. She said, "That's not my real mom. My real mom lives by the lake." I froze. I don't know how long I sat there before speaking. "There must be a misunderstanding," I finally said. "She's my biological daughter. I gave birth to her. Maybe she's pretending, or imagining something." The teacher gave me a sympathetic smile. "Kids do make up stories," she said softly. But Emily seemed serious. "I just thought you'd want to know." When I went to pick her up from the classroom later, Emily looked perfectly fine. She waved at me, cheerful as ever, clutching her backpack. But something in her eyes felt off. Like she was watching me, studying me, instead of just running into my arms. On the drive home, I asked, "Hey, honey. Your teacher said you told the class I'm not your real mom. What made you say that?" Emily looked out the window. Her voice was quiet. "Because you're not." I laughed again, nervously. "Of course I am. Who else would I be?" She turned toward me, her eyes steady. "You don't remember. But I do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I told my husband, Tom, what happened, and he brushed it off. "She's a kid," he said. "They say weird things all the time. Probably something she saw on YouTube." But deep down, I couldn't shake it. Emily wasn't the type to make up stories for attention. And that line, "You don't remember, but I do," kept replaying in my mind like a broken song lyric. The next morning, she drew something at the breakfast table, a crayon picture of a house by a lake, and a woman with red hair holding her hand. The woman didn't look like me. And that's when I started to feel the first flicker of fear. All that day, the picture stayed on the counter. The lake, the red-haired woman, my daughter standing beside her. I kept glancing at it while packing lunches and doing chores. By the third or fourth glance, I noticed something I hadn't before: the way Emily had drawn the sky. Half blue, half gray, like a storm coming in. When I asked about it, she just shrugged. "That's what the sky looks like there," she said. "There?" I asked. "At the lake," she said simply, and went back to eating her cereal. That night after she went to bed, I pulled down the old photo albums. I thought maybe she'd seen something in them that got mixed up in her head. But when I flipped through them, birthdays, family trips, the hospital photos, I realized how few there actually were from when she was born. Tom had taken most of them, and he'd always said he'd lost some when his old laptop crashed years ago. Back then I didn't think twice about it. But now, the missing pictures felt like empty spaces in my memory. Later, when Tom came home from work, I showed him the drawing. "Hun," he said, looking at it with a small laugh, "she's 8. That's what they do. Make stuff up. You're overthinking." But I could tell even he was uneasy. He folded the picture and slid it into a drawer like he didn't want to see it anymore. That night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was coming from Emily's room. When I opened the door, she was sitting up in bed, talking softly toward the window. "Sweetheart?" I said. She jumped, startled. "What are you doing?" She looked at me, guilty, almost scared. "Nothing. I was just talking to her." "To who?" She hesitated. "My real mom." I felt cold all over. "Emily," I said as gently as I could, "I am your mom." She shook her head. "No. She told me you'd say that." After that, she pulled the blanket over her head and refused to talk anymore. I went back to my room, shaking, and Tom mumbled half asleep that I needed rest. But when I closed my eyes, I could still hear her whispering under her breath. The next day, I decided to ask my mother, Emily's grandmother, if she remembered anything unusual about Emily's birth. Mom looked surprised when I brought it up. "You had a rough delivery," she said. "We almost lost you from blood loss." "But Emily was fine, was she?" I asked. Her eyes darted away. "Of course she was. Why are you asking?" I didn't answer. I just said, "Do you remember anyone with red hair?" That made her freeze for a second. Then she smiled, but too quickly. "No, honey, you really need to rest. You're letting this get to you." When I left her house, the pit in my stomach only got deeper. That evening, I noticed something else. In Emily's closet, behind a pile of toys, there was a small box. Inside were crumpled drawings, pages torn from notebooks, all showing the same things: a lake, a house with a red door, and the same woman, always drawn in red crayon, always smiling. But one drawing was different. In it, the woman was underwater. When I showed it to Tom, he looked at it for a long time. Then he said quietly, "You need to stop going through her things." Something in his tone made me pause. It wasn't anger, it was fear. Later that night, while brushing my teeth, I heard Emily talking in her sleep. Her voice was small and trembling. "Don't let her take me again," she said. And I realized she was crying. I sat beside her until morning. By the end of that week, I was starting to doubt everything: myself, my memory, even my sanity. I began replaying the months after her birth, trying to remember the hospital clearly, but it was all foggy. The doctor's face, the nurse's voice, the exact moment I held Emily for the first time, all of it felt like a dream I couldn't quite grasp. And the more I tried to remember, the more my head ached. That Sunday, when I was making pancakes, Emily walked into the kitchen wearing one of my sweaters, dragging the hem on the floor. "Mom," she said suddenly, "why do you pretend you don't remember the lake?" I froze mid-stir. "I don't," she cut me off. "It's where we used to live before he took me away." "Who, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked straight at me. "Dad." After that breakfast, Tom acted like nothing had happened. He hummed while washing dishes, made small talk about the weather. I wanted to scream. When I asked him what Emily meant by, "He took me away," he just frowned. "She's been having nightmares," he said. You can't take what an 8-year-old says literally. But I couldn't shake it. That afternoon, while he was at work, I went through the filing cabinet. Insurance forms, utility bills, birth certificates. Emily's certificate was there, creased from years of handling, but something was wrong. The hospital name was handwritten. The doctor's signature was a different ink color, almost photocopied. I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling. That night, I asked Tom, "Do you remember the name of the doctor who delivered her?" He hesitated. "Of course. Dr. Fields." "Why?" "I called the hospital," I said. "There's no record of any Dr. Fields working there in 2016. He set down his fork slowly. "You're digging into things that don't matter anymore, Laura." "Don't matter?" I snapped. "Our daughter is saying I'm not her real mom. How can you?" He slammed his hand on the table. "Drop it." Emily flinched in the next room. After that, he went silent for the rest of the night. The next day, I picked Emily up from school early. We drove to the edge of town, past the old mill, where the highway bends toward the Lake District. "Have we been here before?" I asked. She looked out the window, eyes wide. "Keep going," she whispered. When the water came into view, she pressed her hand to the glass. "That's it," she said. "That's where the house was." I pulled over at a public pier. The lake shimmered in the late afternoon light, quiet and still, surrounded by pine trees. There were no houses now, just ruins, foundations half buried in moss. "Who lived here, sweetheart?" I asked softly. "The woman," she said. "The one with the red hair. She sang to me when I couldn't sleep." I knelt beside her. "Did you live here with her?" She nodded. "Until Daddy took me away." That night, I called my mother again. "Mom," I said, "I need the truth. Was there ever a mix-up when Emily was born?" She went quiet. Finally she said, "Tom handled most of the paperwork. You were unconscious for almost a day after surgery. He said everything was fine. But you saw her. You saw Emily." Mom hesitated. I saw a baby. I was so focused on you, I didn't." Her voice broke. "Laura, what are you thinking?" I hung up before I could answer. I drove to the county records office the next morning. The clerk was kind but firm. "Ma'am, our system shows an error in that record. You'll need to check with the hospital's archives." When I asked where those were, she looked at me oddly. They burned down in the 2017 flood. I stood there, numb, as the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, I called the hospital anyway. A young receptionist answered, "I'm looking for any records about a delivery in March 2016. Patient Laura Carter, doctor named Fields." She put me on hold. When she came back, her tone had changed. "I'm sorry, ma'am, there's no record of that delivery or that doctor." "Are you sure it was here?" "Yes," I said, voice shaking. "It was here, ma'am. Are you certain you delivered a child here at all?" That question followed me home. When I walked in, Emily was on the living room floor coloring again. This time she was drawing a boat. Inside it, two stick figures, a man and a little girl. Underneath, she'd written one word, escape. I asked what it meant. She said quietly, "It's when Daddy said we had to go before she woke up." That night, I confronted Tom again. He was sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. "Who is she?" I asked. "Who's the red-haired woman by the lake?" He looked up slowly. "I told you to stop asking." "No, you tell me the truth or I'll go to the police." For a long time he didn't move. Then he set the phone down and whispered, "You don't want to do that." "Why not?" "Because you'll lose her." My heart stopped. "Lose who?" He looked at me, eyes full of something I couldn't name, guilt, fear, maybe both. She isn't who you think she is," he said. I took a step back. "What are you talking about?" He sighed, rubbed his face. "You weren't supposed to find out. You'd been through so much. The doctors said you couldn't handle another loss." I could barely breathe. "Another loss?" He nodded slowly. "Our baby didn't make it, Laura. She died during delivery." My knees gave out. He went on, voice low and trembling. "The midwife, she knew a woman who'd just died giving birth at the same time. Her husband didn't want the baby. She made a call, said it could be fixed. A child for a child. No one would ever know." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I did it to save you." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. In the hallway, Emily's door creaked. She was standing there, eyes wide. "You lied," she said to him. "You said she'd never know." Then she ran. I was out the door a second later, barefoot, chasing her down the dark street, shouting her name. The night swallowed her small figure as she turned toward the woods, toward the lake. The street lights blurred as I ran. Barefoot, no coat, my breath coming in short gasps. I kept calling her name, my voice echoing against the empty houses. Somewhere ahead, a screen door slammed. A dog barked once and went quiet. Emily. The night was cold enough to sting. I followed the sound of her steps down toward the park and the dark stretch of trees that led to the lake. When I reached the tree line, I stopped and listened. There was only wind and the whisper of water far below. Then a small voice. "Mom?" It came from the direction of the dock. I followed it, heart pounding. She was standing at the end of the pier, hair whipping around her face, her small shoulders trembling. I slowed down, afraid to startle her. "Sweetheart, please come back," I said. She didn't move. "You lied," she said. "You both lied." The moonlight caught her face, tears glistening, but her eyes steady. I wanted to tell her everything, to explain what I didn't even understand myself. But she spoke first. She said you'd come. The woman with the red hair. For a heartbeat, the air seemed to thicken. I looked out over the water, expecting to see nothing, and yet, for the smallest moment, I thought I saw a ripple, like someone walking just under the surface. "Emily," I whispered, "look at me." She did. "I didn't know," I said. "I thought I lost you once already. I never wanted to lose you again." Her chin quivered. "You're not my first mom." "No," I said, stepping closer, "but I am the one here now. And I love you more than anything in this world." Something inside me loosened, like a knot untying. The wind softened. A frog croaked somewhere in the reeds. After a long silence, she whispered, "Can we go home?" I nodded and held out my hand. When she took it, her fingers were cold, but her grip was sure. We walked back up the path together, and with every step I felt the weight of the past settle behind us. Tom was waiting at the edge of the street, pacing under the porch light. He ran to us the moment he saw her. I stopped him with a look. "No more lies." He nodded. "I'll fix it," he said quietly. "We'll do it right this time." That night, we didn't sleep. We sat in the living room, the three of us, while dawn slowly colored the windows. We talked, about truth, about loss, about what it means to choose love even when the foundation is broken. Emily fell asleep between us, her head on my shoulder. Tom whispered, "She looks so much like you when she sleeps." And for once, I believed him, not because of blood, but because she was ours in every way that mattered.